What's going on, YouTube? This is a piece on the Glock 23. A lot of what I say will apply to all Glocks, but I'm going to focus on the 23. This is my Glock 23. It's a Generation 4 Glock. I've owned some Glock 23s that were previous generation. I just happened to get this, not because it was Generation 4, but because it was available. I've owned lots of different pistols and carried lots of different pistols. I've carried H&K USP, I've carried a SIG 226, and I keep coming back to the Glock. The Glock in some ways, there's a lot of rumor and a lot of misinformation actually out there about the Glock. And I'd kind of like to take a minute or two just to talk about some of the features, some of the reasons why I like it, and kind of dispel some of the stuff that's out there. I made actually two modifications to this Glock. I got a different trigger insert put in here to lower the poundage on the trigger, so it's a little bit lighter, not a lot. And the slide stop, I got the extended slide stop. Now, you know, the thing about the Glock a lot of people say they don't like is it doesn't have a external safety switch. It doesn't have a grip safety like the XD does or the 45s. It doesn't have a switch up here that I can manually enable or disable. Well, you know, some of you guys already know this, but apparently some people don't. Is the thing about the Glock is the Glock is a combat pistol, and it was engineered to be that way. And the reason it doesn't have a manual safety is because this gun was made to be able to bring into battery and bring into the fight immediately without having to worry about having a switch or a button or something to depress before you bring it on target. And that's what the trigger safety addresses. Once you come up and get on target and depress the trigger, the safety's disengaged. So really it's kind of a misnomer. It does have a safety, but a safety for which it was designed. The only thing you need to do with the Glock to disable the safety is identify your target, put your finger on the trigger and squeeze. And that's by design. Another thing is the slide stop. This is referred to quite often on a lot of YouTube videos as a slide release. And on some pistols it is true that it is in fact a slide release. On the Glock it's not. As a matter of fact, if you look in the Glock manual, it's not even known as a slide release. It's known as a slide stop. And that's to emphasize, you know, a lot of schools and a lot of schools of thought are to use gross motor skills and what's called the slingshot, in which it locks the rear, you pull this back using the serrations and let it go, or slingshot it, and it racks back into battery. Myself, the way I shoot and the way that I've trained, I have no problems using this, and that's why I actually got the extension. My fingers are a little bit shorter than most, but when I'm shooting and this thing locks back and I reload, once I reload, I just put my support hand back where it goes and boom, back down it goes. I've never had a problem. It's easy for me. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that use this the same way. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that slingshot it. Which way is best? I think whichever way is best for you. There's a lot of information out there where people go and they're like, this method's best and this and that. And they say, hey, well, you know, this is the way you should do it. You should, you know, gross motor skills, you should slingshot it every time. I've been to a lot of training, and I've been using the Glock for years, and my argument is whatever you can employ safely and effectively to use any weapon is the best option for you. I've trained and had a slingshot and had to get it back in battery that way, and I've used it this way. Now, for people that use firearms a lot and have had a lot of training, what eventually happens is you take all this knowledge that you're given and you develop your own style and you develop your own techniques. You know, so there's a lot of hybridization going on. But I really believe you get to a place where whatever technique is best for you is the technique that's best for you. So I'm not going to get caught up in a lot of things. But I will make one point that always kind of makes me laugh. You know, they say, well, this is a fine motor skill. Under stress, you know, you might not do that. You might lose that. But it makes me laugh because there's so many things on a firearm that incorporate fine motor skills. Very difficult to shoot a firearm. Marksmanship takes a long time to develop and to hone, and then it takes even longer to maintain. Is not lining up the sights on a firearm involve certain points that would be considered fine motor skills, lining up the 3 squares and then maintaining that under pressure to keep your gun accurate. Maybe. If you're up close, you can be down and dirty and just front sight it, or maybe you won't even sight it at all. But in certain distances and in certain situations where you have to take a precise shot, you're incorporating elements of fine motor skills. You know, when you squeeze the trigger and you're under pressure and you need to actually squeeze the trigger and come down on it without jerking it while maintaining an accurate sight picture, there's elements of fine motor skills in that. You know, nobody is trained that I've ever seen where they take their bare paw up and slap the magazine release. That's a button just like that is. You know, taking your finger and manipulating that, is that a fine motor skill? I don't know. I would argue that that's as fine a motor skill as that, as pushing this down. I mean, if I have my gun up, I'm in battery and it locks back, my thumb's up, all I'm doing is dropping it back down in place. To me, that's no more of a fine motor skill than depressing this. You know, I'm out of ammo, I'm locked back, I'm taking a magazine, I'm inserting it into here. Are there elements of fine motor skills in this action? Of course there are. So I think the fine motor skill argument is a good one for the novice, and it's definitely one to think about and to build on. But my point is that in terms of fine motor skills and gross motor skills, training ultimately can replace some of this. If you've been trained and you've gone over something over and over and over again, you know, just like they say, you know, when you're under stress, you lose some of your fine motor skills. They also say when you're under stress, you revert back to your training. If you've gone over some points in this and you're comfortable with it and you can employ it time and time and time again, then it's effective. It's effective for you. And that's the point I'm trying to drive home here. It's whatever's most effective for you. But I love the 23. I love using it. A lot of people say that the Glock is unsafe because you have to pull the trigger before you can break it down to clean it. I think that's a very valid point, and that's the only thing I'll really say about it. I don't inherently think it's negative, because the one thing that argument leaves out is the fact that when you're cleaning or maintaining any firearm, the first thing you always want to do is check to make sure that the gun is unloaded and that the round is out of the chamber. And you want to do that with any weapon. Now, some weapons won't allow you to break it down until they've ensured that you've checked. But for this, if you're using the elements of firearm safety and you're checking, and you check this weapon before you break it down like you're supposed to with every weapon, you're not going to run into that issue. Now, if you're careless and you don't check, you're right. If you pull a trigger on this and there's a round in there, it will go off. But that being said, you know, if you incorporate the safety techniques that you should, you're not going to run into any problem. And for that matter, a lot of people say, well, the Glock, you know, doesn't have enough safeties, or, you know, they don't like the trigger safety. I'm going to get a lot of haters for this comment, but I truly believe that safeties on weapons are a confidence trick. They really are. There's too much talk about reliance on safeties and this safety and that safety. To be honest, and I really believe the only 100% effective safety on any weapon is the shooter. You know, if you're using the rules of firearms handling and the rules of engagement, you know your target, what's beyond it. All weapons are always loaded. Don't cover anything you don't want to destroy. If you abide by those rules and you incorporate safe weapons handling, your gun is going to be safe. You know, I think a lot of people rely entirely too much on the bells and whistles to keep their gun safe, when really most of the time a little common sense and safe gun handling practices will go a long way to preventing catastrophe. The way guns are made now, you know, they pretty much all have drop safeties and things like that. Can things go wrong? Absolutely. You know, but for the most part, you know, 9 times out of 10, when there's an incident involving a firearm, it's usually due to carelessness or recklessness, more so than it is a weapon just going off on its own, or something wrong with the safety feature. But anyway, so this is my gun. It's a Glock 23, night sights. Love it. Highly recommend it. Again, it's a personal choice. There's lots of people out there that don't like Glock. This is something that I'm very comfortable with, and I can shoot really well and employ effectively. That makes it an effective firearm. Am I endorsing this for everyone? Am I saying that everyone needs to own the Glock 23? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But I just wanted to share a little bit about my thoughts about the Glock and about, you know, handling it, and I hope you enjoyed it.